Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, colleagues and friends. It's a pleasure to join you today, albeit virtually, from here at the NATO headquarters in Brussels. I continue to be impressed by the CyberSec organizing team as they curate such a rich agenda and lineup of speakers and topics for this forum. And I'm grateful to be part of this strong cyber community. This conference comes at an unprecedented time. We face a profoundly changed security environment. Cyberspace has been central to the war in Ukraine. Cyber attacks were used to open the invasion, to disable Ukrainian communications and the ability for the government to communicate with its people, and to distort the narrative through disinformation. In recent months, we've seen cyber attacks with data-wiping malware continue to target Ukrainian entities in government, commercial, and energy sectors to paralyze computer systems. Some of this malware has had cascading effects beyond Ukraine's borders. For example, the hack on the KATOWICE satellite network, which affected internet connectivity for tens of thousands of people across Europe. In recent weeks, we saw failed attempts to disrupt the Ukrainian power grid, which could have left millions of people in the dark. And in recent days, we have seen further warnings from our governments against impending cyber attacks against critical infrastructure in response to support provided to Ukraine and the sanctions against Russia. Protecting and securing cyberspace is not something any one nation, any one alliance, or any one continent can do alone, which is why an alliance like NATO and its partnership network across the globe are so vital during this pivotal moment for our shared security. Today, I would like to reflect on three main themes. First, on the strategic importance of cyber for current and future conflicts. Second, on how allies are responding to this changed security environment. And third, on the role of cyberspace and the emerging and disruptive technologies it enables. First, some initial observations on the strategic importance of cyber for current and future conflicts. It is important to see cyberspace for what it is, a contested space. Unlike other domains, it is always on. There is constant friction and continuous activity. A blurring of the lines between peace, crisis, and conflict. And these unique characteristics render traditional thoughts on deterrence less effective. It is simply not possible to prevent and deter all cyber activity, so we must shift our thinking towards a more proactive approach. And this leads me to my second point, which is that cyberspace is a means to achieve strategic effects. The scale of the pre-kinetic destructive cyber operations that took place in Ukraine was unprecedented. Initial observations suggest that cyber means can achieve effects and may not necessarily take the form of shock-and-awe events, but through more insidious and persistent campaigns. As Russia's invasion of Ukraine began, the importance of cyber as an enabler and a complement to traditional kinetic war became apparent. Recent reports by one private sector actor underline this. More generally, this highlights how modern warfare may combine both cyber and kinetic means in support of shared political and military objectives. Speaking of the private sector, my third point is that cyberspace is a shared space with many actors, not just governments. The private sector are often the owners, operators, and innovators in cyberspace. And during this war, we have seen them take up a critical role in defending against cyber attacks, working to respond to incidents and share information, ensure backups of data, and keep systems up and running. While we've been talking about public-private partnerships for years, the events of the last months truly have seen a new level of engagement and partnership between public and private sectors to advance international peace and security. This is remarkable, and it needs to be further embedded within our longer-term approach to tackling persistent malicious cyber activities and campaigns. With the above reflections on the strategic importance of cyber for current and future conflicts, let me now turn concretely to how NATO is responding to this changed security environment. Allies recognized cyber defense as part of NATO's core task of collective defense already in 2014. And with NATO's most recent cyber policy, adopted in 2021, allies acknowledge that the impact of significant malicious cumulative cyber activities might, in certain circumstances, be considered as amounting to an armed attack. Once again, this goes back to seeing cyberspace for the unique domain that it is, and ensuring that we are postured to respond to this reality. NATO must actively deter, defend against, and counter the full spectrum of cyber threats at all times. And if necessary, allies will impose cost on those who harm them, and such responses are not limited to cyberspace. To put words into actions, allies are making greater use of NATO as a platform for political consultations. Allies are sharing information and concerns, exchanging national approaches, as well as considering possible collective responses. They have been clear that they stand ready to respond to malicious cyber activities by using all of the tools in the toolbox, be it political, economic, diplomatic, or military. To support these efforts, allies continue to bolster their resilience in the face of potential incidents, targeting especially now critical infrastructure. On the national level, allies continue to build on the Cyber Defense Pledge adopted by heads of state and government in 2016. And 6 years later, we see continued investments in strategies, capabilities, and skills. While national cyber defense remains the responsibility of each ally, NATO is a platform where allies are coming together to help each other raise their overall level of resilience. Lastly, enhancing our cyber resilience while defending our values and the rule-based international order is a collective effort. That is why we are working closely with like-minded partners and organizations, including the European Union, to strengthen our cooperation on cyber defense and diplomacy. NATO is engaging with the EU to look at our existing toolboxes for countering cyber threats. And NATO and the EU regularly share information between cyber incident response teams and exchange best practices. We continuously seek opportunities to complement the unique roles and tools of each organization for cyber defense and to amplify possible responses. And we're also enhancing consultations with Sweden and Finland while working closely with partner nations such as Ukraine, Georgia, Japan, New Zealand, and Australia. There are rules that govern cyberspace, and we need to uphold them together. Now finally, let me look at the future. NATO leaders will gather in Madrid next month to agree on a new strategic concept. This is our blueprint for keeping our 1 billion people safe in the decade to come. Cyberspace and the emerging and disruptive technologies it enables will be at the core of strategic competition between states. Technologies such as artificial intelligence, autonomous systems, big data, biotech and quantum are changing the world and our everyday lives. They are also changing the way the alliance operates. They provide us with new opportunities for our militaries, helping them become more effective, more resilient, more efficient, and more sustainable. But they also represent new threats. As we embrace the vast opportunities provided by these new technologies, we must also prepare for the immense risk that can arise from their use. And that is why NATO and its allies have placed a priority on fostering and protecting our technological edge. Allies have agreed to undertake ambitious efforts on emerging and disruptive technologies across different key technology areas, including AI, biotechnology, quantum, energy propulsion, novel materials and manufacturing, and space. Allies recognize that new technologies will form the backbone of our deterrence and defense posture and urge to take steps to stay ahead in the technology race. This is being done through new initiatives, such as the Defense Innovation Accelerator for the North Atlantic, or in short DIANA, which will broaden our transatlantic innovation ecosystem for defense and security. And through the NATO Innovation Fund, a multinationally funded effort to provide venture financing to cutting-edge startups developing dual-use technologies. In this day and age of strategic competition and conflict, maintaining and sharpening our technological edge will be a decisive part as we stand together to protect our citizens and our values. Values and principles must be upheld in cyberspace and in the ways technologies are being developed and fielded. NATO will continue to do its part to ensure responsible use of these technologies and to ensure that cyberspace is free, open and secure. Ladies and gentlemen, international stability has been challenged in recent months. Peace on the European continent has been fundamentally shattered. There is a war on a scale and a type that we thought belonged to history. This pivotal moment requires our collective resolve to secure the future of democracy, the future of our principles and our values. These values are the most precious asset of the NATO alliance. We are united in defending them, now and in the future. Allow me to close by congratulating Vice Prime Minister Fedorov of Ukraine for being this year's recipient of the CyberSec Award. Ukrainians have inspired the world with heroic resistance to Russia's brutal war of conquest, and allies stand in full solidarity with President Zelensky, the government of Ukraine, and with the brave Ukrainian citizens who are defending their homeland. Our strong political and practical support for Ukraine will continue, both in the physical world as well as the digital one. Thank you very much.